This video contains flashing lights and is not for those with any form of epilepsy. Vampire Survivors is an extremely flashy game. Continue at your own discretion. So, you've heard of Vampire Survivors and want to know what the game is about. On the surface, this game is just about making yourself stronger while fighting off even stronger waves of unique enemies and bosses. Though, if you dig a bit deeper, you might just be surprised how deep this game goes. To save from spoilers and to give a better idea of how the progression works, I made a whole new Steam account to start the game from scratch. The Glorious Shaboinger will be our starter guide for this. So when you boot up the game, you've got a couple of options at your disposal. Collection is where everything you've collected, whether it be off the ground or from leveling up, can be found. Power Up is where you can use your concurrent 0 coins to purchase upgrades to make the game easier or more difficult. Unlocks is where everything you unlock by beating in-game quote-unquote challenges appears. None of this matters unless you play the game. So, hit the start button and choose a character. Or just Antonio for now. Then choose the only stage available, unless you own the DLC, and start surviving.
Hi.
So now that you're playing a Castlevania fan character, it's time to break down this game's core gameplay loop. You kill enemies, gather experience crystals, and level up to get better weapons and gear, all while dodging waves of bats, ghosts, and Florida residents. This, right here, is why Vampire Survivors really shines in replayability, because what you are looking at right now is what everyone who has 2,000 plus hours on this game looks at every time they play, with a bit of a color swap. As I said earlier, the mechanics go deep, so let's examine the most basic weapons and gear to see what the funny numbers on the side of the screen mean. Every time you level up in Vampire Survivors, you get a choice of 3 to sometimes 4 items to upgrade/receive. For this video, I'm going to explain what I got in my first run. The whip is a basic weapon that has 7 levels of upgrading, 8 if you include having just the whip in the first place. The first upgrade of the whip is labeled as firing 1 more projectile. Simple enough, it whips twice instead of once. The rest of the upgrades, 3 through 8, are either flat damage increases to the weapon or increases to its area. These stats give us 2 things that can already be increased by the power-up menu or other gear, these being projectiles or amount, as it's referred to in the stats, and area. Amount is a big deal, as I'm sure you can imagine. Shooting 2 bullets per second is always better than shooting 1. Amount is a stat that doesn't get upgraded much over the game, mostly for it being a straight DPS upgrade for all the weapons it affects. This gets somewhat circumvented due to these weapons firing faster later in their upgrades. Area is the size of the projectiles you shoot out, and it can range from pea shooter sized bullets to covering the screen with so much stuff it would make Gen Z Family Guy TikTok jealous. This is an extremely easy stat to upgrade, as most weapons have a built-in area upgrade in them somewhere. The second weapon I picked up in this run was the Magic Wand, a slow-firing weapon that shoots a magic missile at the closest enemy. This weapon is too affected by area and amount, but adds a new stat: cooldown. Cooldown makes it so that your weapons fire faster. Remember just a couple seconds ago when I mentioned circumventing those pesky amount values? Well, this is how you turn your magic wand into a magic machine pistol.
Not Colado, it's not Colado. This is. Not Colado.
Cooldown affects almost every weapon in the game, so it's a good idea to take it when you can. The third weapon I picked up, the knife, adds nothing new to the table. It's just a JoJo reference. After some more bat extinction efforts, I picked up my first passive item, Spinach. Spinach increases your might by 10% per level it has, for a total of 5 levels. Base might for most characters is 100% and is not displayed in the stat menu in-game, which means that Spinach, at its max level, should put you at 150% might. But I'm unsure if that's the case. Regardless, it's one of 2 items that directly upgrade your damage. This item is the first of many that directly upgrade your stats. In this run, I only had Spinach unlocked, but since I did well before I turned into Meat Sludge, I unlocked some other items that directly upgrade other stats. The next stat, Duration, is extremely important to some weapons. The King Bible and Santa Water I picked up are heavily affected by this stat, as it determines how long they stay on the screen for. Duration also affects pickups like the Fire Breath and the Time Stop, as well as weapons that debuff the enemy. Last item I got was Armor, and fortunately enough, it's a lot easier to understand than the rest of the stats on the list. Armor simply decreases the amount of damage you take from attacks, while also increasing damage for weapons that retaliate when you are hit. These are all the stats I encountered throughout my first run, but I'm going to quick fire down the stat list and explain the ones I missed, though most of these are not as in-depth as the others.
Ready? Go!
Max health, the amount of damage you can take before melting. Recovery, the amount of health you recover per second. Movement speed, percentage value times your base movement speed. Skipping over might brings us to speed, specifically projectile speed. It determines how fast the projectiles you shoot go. Never take this, it's not that good. Down further brings us to revival, which is essentially an extra life system. Magnet, it's the range that you collect items and XP from. Luck, affects the amount of items you get from chests and what items drop from destructible objects. Greed, gives your coin pickups and money earned from chests the laundering treatment. Curse, makes enemies stronger, better, faster, and has the off-screen machine making them work overtime. Reroll, skip, and banish all have to do with the level up menu. Reroll gives you new options, skip is for when you just want the weapon for your grand plan to have the perfect build, and banish is for bracer, and anything else you don't want. It is worth noting that some stats are percent-based while others are just flat numbers. For having such a long list of numbers and percentages to keep track of though, it is rather easy to understand them, once you've melted a couple times at least. So, that's it. That's all I wanted to talk about. Vampire Survivors is a wonderful game, and I heavily incentivize you to buy it and play it. The game itself is $5, and with the DLC it's $13. I have around 40 hours in this game, and I still have a lot to unlock and toy around with. It's a blast throwing yourself into the later game challenges and levels, as you don't know what kind of crazy game-altering thing you'll find in there. Also, sorry if this review/education rant wasn't very cohesive. It's my first time making something like this, so if you made it to the end, I thank you, and have a wonderful day.